And you mentioned during your presentation today, don't shut down crazy ideas. Could you explain that?
Sure. When you get a lot of different ideas coming through, it's very, very easy to just say, no, this is not going to work. Nothing's going to come out of this, or it's too difficult, and the users will never want it. But frequently, it's our paradigms that actually stop us from actually looking at the idea in a much broader context. Now, what you do ultimately is you actually start by saying, yes, we'll listen to that. You find in a lot of cases that the ideas that are that crazy, that wild, actually turn out into some real winners. And we've had lots of experiences of that. I mean, there was a good example of where somebody wanted to, and this is particular for the medical industry, authenticate some blood products, and they wanted to build a product that actually was totally portable, sterilizable, and actually could do the authentication and using technology. And it would say, no, we can't do it. Why can't we do it? Because it's just out of this world. And ultimately, 6 months later, the product, we managed to do the product. And how do we do it? Because we took that idea and we look around it. We say, well, what's really right about this idea? Well, the principles, what's really right.
To get these innovative ideas, how do you establish an environment to have your employees essentially tell you these ideas?
It comes back to culture. The culture, you want a culture that's open, that's honest. You don't, you tolerate mistakes, and mistakes will happen. That's okay. It's okay to experiment. It's okay to try. It's not okay to experiment on the process line that's stable, but it's okay to experiment off the process line. The example I gave during the talk was when we went down to see we had an intensive care product, and we sold it to the nurses. They loved it. We sold it to the clinicians. They loved it. But ultimately, we were still missing something. And what we did was we went out and we stayed in intensive care one evening overnight and actually watch how the nurses and the clinicians were using the product, and we discovered things about the product we never even know. And it wasn't the CEO who did that, it was actually the frontline manufacturing people, it was the R&D people who actually, it wasn't the marketing person who came up with those ideas. But we allow people to actually come up with ideas. We allow people to actually think about what they're doing, to engage the customers directly, and it is not the forte of any specific department or function. It's creating that cross-functional cooperation, both internally and externally.
What do you think about the LiFT program?
Oh, I think it's a fantastic program, because if you look at businesses particular, once they get past the startup stage, a lot of them have problems with scaling. And they have problems scaling because if you look at the life cycle of a company, the competencies, the experiences, the skill sets that the people require, they're different at each stage. And we frequently assume that the person who founds the company and the people who started with the founder will actually take it through all the way to scale, to maturity, and ongoing. It doesn't work like that. There are very, very few examples of companies who the founder has actually continue to be the person running the show when they're big. I mean, of course, Michael Dell is a good example of that. Richard Branson is another good example of that. But for the majority of companies, you need different skill sets. And where you have the same person following through, they need exposure. They really need to understand that there are other ways of doing it. There are other ways of actually being able to grow the company, because and you can learn from lots of different companies out there. You can learn from the LiFT as far as the LiFT program is concerned. Innovation Factory has a lot of experience. They have, they can help to actually impart that experience across and help show these small to medium-sized enterprises how they can go from where they are today to the next stage in their cycle.